A Native American proverb about trauma. Healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls your life. Well, joining us to talk about that and the Rural Providers Conference and its efforts to address historical trauma, Doug Modig, one of the organizers of the conference. Now, Rural CAP is the organization that sponsors it, but they pretty much stay out of the organizing of the event. So who are the people that sort of put this conference together and plan it out?
Well, people like John and Teresa, they're what they learned to be called stakeholders, and it's actually the staff that represents the stand that we have taken to address alcohol and drug abuse.
So it's a symbol.
And all the effects. Yes, yeah, it's a symbol.
And what does it mean?
It means that recovery begins with us personally, and we've taken a personal responsibility for recovery on behalf of our people.
So you sort of stake your grounds.
Sort of, yes, yes.
Well,
actually built on a real story that takes a long time to tell.
Well, many of these stories take a long time, but I'm glad to just kind of bring a few of them forward. What does Tanacross bring to the conference in your mind?
Well, it represents a cultural resiliency, and resiliency is what sort of trumps trauma. Dr. Linda Chamberlain talks about that when she talks about, historical trauma and what we're trying to do to help heal it.
Well, these photographs that we have from old Tanacross kind of give you insight into the big changes that people went through. Now, this is the community in the wintertime, and the elders say that it got to 72 below sometimes. I mean, those were hard winters, a hard life.
Well, from a modern perspective, you'd think, well, gee, that's really, really cold, right? But actually, the people had lived as one with the environment based upon their cultural resiliency.
So what is it about, a place like that that has such a hold on people?
It gave them life. It gave them a future.
And, one of the things that Jerry Isaac talked about, though, was sort of this deep hurt over, having the missionaries impose things. Do you think that resonates with a lot of Alaska Natives?
When we were separated from those things that helped us heal on a regular basis, yes, it did. Because it was replaced with an empty shell of a belief system that actually didn't serve us, didn't help us.
Didn't fit with the land and the lifestyle necessarily.
Right, that's exactly it.
But yet natives embraced some of those changes.
They did, because they came out of a real tragic time. The diseases, the catastrophes that happened, in the beginning of the last century, that they were so overwhelming that when the people that supposedly were there to help us, said, well, you have to give up, it's time to give up your old ways because your old ways aren't helping you. And actually, they weren't allowed to readjust to the modern world.
It just happened so fast. I mean, look there, a 4th of July celebration.
Right.
So things came fast.
They did, yep.
Well, one of the things that you see at the conference is just a lot of storytelling. People telling stories. That seems so simple. I mean,
it's what our elders told us. It says that our story, our culture, you need to allow people to tell their stories. And in telling their stories, they will tell you what they need in order to heal.
Do you think that this acknowledgement of historical trauma is important at this time? Because it seems like it's been a long time in coming.
Well, it helps us to explain. It helps us to understand. It helps explain what happened and how it happened. And when you can look at the source, when you can address the source, then healing is possible. But it comes from your story, and everybody has a different story.
Well, we saw with John and Teresa Pingayak that there is this tug of war between the Western world and Native spirituality.
Ultimately, there is, because they sort of rest for authority. over the people. You know, they want their souls, and if they were to, you know, stack up a bunch of souls, then they're sort of winning. On the other hand, the cost is that how do you teach people how to live successfully in the modern world? And some of the issues that we address today cannot be responded to by a simple belief system. We need to walk the spiritual path on practical feet.
Well, one of the things we saw in John and Teresa's story is that sometimes, you know, some of the struggles come not from the Western world, but from within the Native community.
Well, ultimately, they came to believe that Christianity or a different way of living is going to help them. But that's kind of like saying that television is the answer, or that a university education is the answer. But if you're living in a community, in a village, the real issue is how do you live with the people that you're there with? You know, and it doesn't matter how much money you have or what kind of education you have. If you can't get along with the people you're living with, doesn't make any sense.
And that's kind of where tradition comes in, and being able to keep your culture. Well, if you want to know more about the conference for next year, you can go to Rural Cap's website, and they'll be posting information on that. Well, for now, we leave you with a song from John Pingayak, an ancient song about the power of miracles. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Kashkam, kashkam.